Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to another episode of TellyCast. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about operations and production within the creator economy and digital first, and we've got Bryony Hopkins from BRYONY Ink with us, who's one of the real experts in this space. So welcome, Bryony. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm really well. Really keen to talk about the nitty-gritty of making stuff.
That is my favourite thing to talk about.
Yeah, great. Because we've talked in recent shows, we've talked a lot about creativity and ideas, and that's great, and that's fantastic, and the power of storytelling that works both within traditional TV and obviously digital first. But what we haven't done is talk about the importance of creating content on a budget and creating, broadcast quality content essentially on a digital budget. So let's get into that. But before we do so, tell us about your career then. Give us a sort of whistle-stop tour of your career in production up to this point.
So I started my career in BBC News, which I didn't realise at the time. And Steve Jobs has this famous quote where he talks about you never can connect the dot forwards, but you can connect the dots backwards. I started in my career as a journalist and producer making stuff in the newsroom, and what it means making stuff for news is that you are doing it extremely quickly, under pressure, thinking fast, pitching fast, and you do that all in a 8-hour day, and then you go to sleep and you go back to work and do the same thing again. And what I have come to realise now in where I am in my career now is that was the perfect training ground for the creator economy, because actually the creator economy and newsrooms share quite a lot of the same themes, which is pitch fast, pivot fast, do things quickly, have a plan A, plan B, plan C. So I started in news. I then, in the latter part of my career at the BBC, where I was there for 7 years, throughout my 20s, I was making short films for BBC Three and BBC Studios when it was under that name, and we were making things for youth audiences. And this was probably about 6-7 years ago now, and that was kind of dipping my toe in digital for the first time. And I made the very big decision after 7 years at the BBC to take voluntary redundancy. And at the time, I really didn't know what that was going to lead to. But I knew that there was a bigger opportunity out there, and I was applying for so many jobs. I got so many rejections. It was unbelievable. And then I got offered a job at LADbible in commercial. So I went from basically journalism, hard journalism, to commercial. And whilst that at the time seemed like quite a pivot, from a production perspective, the through line was actually very similar, because it was, again, making things fast, making lots of deliverables, making it on a budget. I was just doing it for a client rather than a news audience. So I went to LADbible. I produced a bunch of award-winning campaigns, including Disney Plus and Visit Britain. And the kind of one of the core things that I was doing while I was working in branded was producing campaigns that were making so much content from one shoot day, which is kind of a theme that has transcended over the past 5 years. I then went to work in the originals team, which is where I met Ben Powell-Jones, which was kind of evolved my career to Strongwatch after that. And he and the team had already developed a lot of IP that is very well known in the YouTube space, like Minutes With, Agree to Disagree, Snack Wars. And there I oversaw the operations of the team. I also wrote a duty of care policy from scratch, which was something that is a real TV piece, and it wasn't something that existed in that digital space. So I wrote one, we rolled it out, we started selling it as part of our commercial offering, and that, I think that to me was the first signal in my head that there was production infrastructure that was existing in my TV world era with the BBC that was now, I was transferring it into the digital space. I then went to Watch Studios, where I was the first hire alongside Ben and Tom, who were the co-founders. And when I joined, I always make the joke that I was like I was head of 0 productions. There was no productions when I joined. And I was there for 2.5 years, and the slate absolutely boomed while we were there. And I built all of the production infrastructure. I built every production model that came out of the building. And we made things for JD Sport, BBC, Channel 4, ITV. We made season 3 of Inside for Netflix. And for me, again, that was just every single time I was looking at a production, I was building it in a different way. I then went to FlightStory, where I was working for Behind the Diary, which is Stephen's companion channel to Diary of a CEO. And that was a really interesting production because it was creator-led, and it was also sort of the inner workings of his world. And that was, again, from an infrastructure perspective, absolutely fascinating in terms of how to make that work. And then most recently, literally 4 weeks ago, I launched BRYONY Ink, which is a production consultancy, because I just repeatedly from the inside saw this gap of building different types of production models. No matter what angle of the industry you are, whether you're a broadcaster, a TV company, a creator, you're coming into it with the same problem. I was just seeing the same problem repeated over and over again, and often it was just scaling really quickly, understanding how you could do it at a good price point. And so over the past 4 weeks, I'm working now with all manners of businesses who are trying to tackle the same problem.
Okay, fantastic. Well, the duty of care piece, we're going to come back to
Yes.
that in a little while, because that's something that I'm really keen to discuss, particularly when it comes to the digital space. But you talked about scaling then, and scaling productions and sort of scaling businesses right from the start. Now, there's a lot of, I think, nervousness about traditional TV production companies getting into the digital space for a number of different reasons. Obviously, the way that they're organized as a business is very different to perhaps what you want in a digital first business and a new studio like you set up Strongwatch. So talk us through that, setting up a digital first studio then. Give us a sense of what are the first 2 or 3 things on the checklist to do. I mean, is it buying kit? Is it really important to buy your own kit rather than rent it? Or, how does all of that infrastructure stuff work?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I always start with the question back to whoever's asked me the question, what is your goal? And often actually that question opens up lots of other questions, because I think the conversations that I have is we just need to get into digital. That is such a wide brief. What are we trying to achieve right now, and how can we do it in the leanest way possible? Because as we probably will talk about, and I've talked about a lot, the money isn't that generous often in the digital space, and we should be realistic and transparent about that. So you have to think about production in a different way. The fundamental pieces that I always think about is, how are we filming it in the most streamlined way possible? Who is managing it in the most streamlined way possible? And how are we managing that data? Data sounds boring, but in the digital space, I mean, in the TV and film space, data can just become very expensive very quickly, and also can become very inefficient very quickly if you haven't thought that through. And then I suppose the fourth point that underpins all of that is, how much money have you got to play with? I always start with, I often say the creative chat is the money chat. We have to think about the creative at the same time we're thinking about the money, and then everything kind of flows from there. And then you build out as you get bigger and you scale.
Yeah. So just to dig into that a little bit then, when you say the creative chat and the money chat at the same time, I mean, how does that differ? How does the way that you've got to approach digital first production and building a digital first studio differ from a traditional TV production business?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to a couple of things. I think it comes down to the deliverables. And when I say deliverables, I mean, are you doing long form for YouTube? Are you delivering audio to Spotify? Are you delivering short form? If you are, how many? So that piece, and also the distribution. And so, I mean, they're kind of one and the same, but from a production perspective, you need to be thinking about how you're actually making those. And then for the distribution piece, you need to be thinking about how you're optimizing what you make to ensure that you're reaching your goal, whether that's monetization or reaching new audiences or diversifying your revenue streams, whatever it is. And you have to, I think in the traditional TV model, you will just be delivering one program, probably to one platform, and you probably have a set period of time where you might be doing that over 6 months or 12 months or 2 years. Sometimes TV series take a really long time to make, and then you deliver it, and then you start again with a different commission. Whereas a lot of the models that I build are either always on, so that means you're kind of building something completely different because it has to run as a regular cadence, much like this podcast. It's an always on model. The infrastructure around us right now will have been designed in a very particular way to facilitate that. And we also have to think about how we're shooting it, and also how you are putting the format together so that you can just shoot for an hour and then you can get one YouTube, and then you could also probably get 5 or 6 or 7 short forms that are going to work.
Yeah.
Standalone by themselves.
Yeah. And that's one of the real differences, particularly when, you talked about LADbible, but, lots of different production companies are faced with this. If they've got an always on show, the amount of content and assets that you actually need to make a show successful. It's not just the show itself. That's one of hundreds of pieces of content potentially, in a month that is needed. So how do you create an efficient production around that? Because it needs a lot of manpower, obviously needs a lot of AI, help as well. What, for somebody who's sitting down, it's interesting. We spoke to the guys from Middle Child, Andrew Eastall, and they realized that they couldn't approach their new digital first project in the same way within their overall Middle Child production. So they set up a new business called Wild Child and approached it in a completely new way.
Yeah.
Presumably that's what you would advise to other businesses that are approaching digital first.
I think there's 2 ways that you can do it. You can take that approach and start a completely new team that has its own workflows, its own skill set. I think there's a really important piece and something that I feel really passionately about, but is more leaning to the long game, which is training up your teams currently to think digitally. Because I do think thinking digitally and thinking in a social ecosystem is a mindset shift as much as it is a infrastructure shift. And I feel really passionately about people in TV thinking about digital and thinking about how they can make that pivot. I think if you have the ability as a company to invest in upskilling your people so that they can make the transition, because I think the industry is making a huge transition, and I think media and how we know it is going to massively change in the next 3 to 5 years. We're seeing creators are running like media companies now. They're running with the sophistication and the infrastructure of TV and media companies. That's not going to change. We're only pivoting towards that more. It's going
to become more sophisticated, right?
More sophisticated, and the what creators need in terms of their infrastructure will be different to what traditional TV companies need. And people and skill sets is such a massive part of that. So I think in the short term, setting up an individual team, and I advise this a lot, is to get, to your first goal. But if you have the ability to train up your current staff, whether that's providing them with training or bringing people in, I feel very strongly about that, because I think we all need to invest in the people in the industry so that we're all, and also in digital, we do have a skills gap.
Yeah.
So, and there's people in TV who have all those skills. They just maybe haven't made that transition to know how to apply them.
Yeah. There's so many freelancers out there that are struggling for work, as the production downturn continues and probably becomes more and more steeper in its decline.
Yeah.
There's going to be more and more really skilled TV people out there that that can are more than capable of creating huge hit podcasts and whatever else that the digital world is offering.
Yeah. At Strongwell Studios, we made a travelogue for Channel 4, which was with Tourism Island. And it was a digital project, it was a digital price point, it was for YouTube in partnership with Tourism Island. And we knew that to get the type of show that we wanted, we should lean into someone who's made travel logs for TV, because it's a very specific skill set, the pacing and getting the best out of the presenter. And so we hired a TV director to come in and execute it for us. And I think that's such a perfect example of, like, we went out looking for someone who had a skill set that we needed, and then we just applied it to digital. And I think I've talked to a lot of freelancers in the TV industry, and I always advise them, what are you good at? What's your niche and what genre? And then double down on that and package yourself up like that, because that's what the creator economy is missing in lots of ways, is niche artisan crafts people in a particular niche that already exists in TV. It's just packaging yourself up differently and applying it differently.
That's really interesting, because I assumed the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, well, in terms of, within digital first, you obviously have, as you said, much lower budgets, particularly if you're self-funding projects yourself and creating your own IP. But, through the workflow, you've obviously got development, then shooting, and then editing, and then distribution, and then thumbnails, titles, and everything else. Thumbnails and titles should be probably at the beginning of that line, if you like. But there's so many different varied skills that are crucial to success in digital first. Isn't it a case of needing a creative producer that has all of those skills and can apply all of those skills onto a project? Whereas you're saying, actually, the artisan to actually have specialists in all those areas is much more important.
So I think it's a hybrid of both. I think you be getting yourself in rooms, packaging up your skill set. I think then you need to be willing to wear lots of hats. And I think that, again, is such a big difference in the production models that I build and the teams that I build, even from making a smaller YouTube channel to building inside, is that the people that are in that team, they're doing one job, but lots of them are doing multiple jobs. That in a more with a bigger budget or a different type of TV structure, you wouldn't necessarily have that. Yeah. So I think it's a blend of the two. I think from a personal branding perspective, doubling down on your niche is a really good thing, and I'm seeing a lot of people coming through the space because they've packaged up their niche. But then once you're in the production, you need to kind of be willing to get your hands dirty.
That's really important. So in terms of mindset, when it comes to, because TV production is super hierarchical, isn't it, and siloed, and it's like, this is what I do, and this is all that I do. Yeah. Whereas, you need the exact opposite in digital first, like you say. So maybe as you say, it's a blend of the two. Double down on your key skill, but actually be prepared to muck in and learn about all the other elements of digital first as well. Yeah,
and I think that, to me, looking at when I'm building teams and recommending people for teams and hiring, I look at skills, but I also massively look at mindset, because that will be, to me, that is a differentiating factor as to whether you will be able to thrive in a team that is having to think in lots of different ways, because that's how creators think, and that's how businesses around creators think, and that's how we are able to often produce the amount of content that we're able to produce. Yeah. So I think mindset's really important in that sense.
Being open-minded and willing to muck in. Okay. So coming back to duty of care then. Yeah. So I've got a feeling, and this is something we'll probably delve into at the Digital Content Forum this year, because we've seen lots of formats that are starting to develop in the digital first space that, borrow something from reality shows, survival shows, and lots of, really popular television formats that are starting to be produced for digital first now. Now, obviously, duty of care is an actual, a key KPI deliverable that broadcasters insist on. Whereas in the digital first space, if you're a creator and you're making your own content, then, and you're wanted to say, okay, I'm going to take 7 creators out to the jungles of Borneo and leave them there for a week and see who can survive the longest, or something like that. There's no budget there for duty of care. So do you think it's a bit of a ticking time bomb, to be, a problem on the horizon with some of these shows that are just literally going out and going, this approach of just like, screw it, let's do it, just grab the camera and go and make it work, which makes it, makes it really compelling for the viewer.
Yes.
But there is that danger of something going wrong, isn't there? That duty of care that TV has been sort of has developed over years. That sort of skill set and requirement.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head in lots of ways, because, like you said, TV has developed rigor and processes and infrastructure over years, and also we have seen what has happened in TV when. Even sometimes when those processes have been in place and the processes have evolved over the past 10 years, we've seen what has happened when they're not adhered to.
Yeah.
So it's always possible for things to go wrong in our industry and in any industry, but especially when you're making content, and the ideas that we are seeing across the board, I would say, the kind of content that we're being consumed and challenge content is massive. It is being consumed on a massive level. And so yes, there is always a risk that something's going to go wrong. I think that from a duty of care perspective, the creator economy, productions that are made in partnership with streamers and with broadcasters, that rigor is very much transferred.
Well, it's essentially still a TV show, right?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I think that there will have to be an evolution in the duty of care and in the infrastructure that is put in place because of that. Because essentially, the creator economy and creators who have they've built audiences. Lots of them have scaled probably at a speed that they weren't even expecting. And then a lot of the infrastructure that I see, the creators are getting to the point where they realize that they need more processes around them and they need bigger teams around them. But often they might have got past that point and then they're looking at it. So I think that the awareness is out there. I think the fact that we're even having this conversation is a really positive thing. Is there more work to be done? Always. But I think that creators are thinking about it. I think the creator economy is thinking about it. And to have a business, if you are a creator that then becomes a media business, you have to think about those things.
Yeah. So you're saying that for creators that are self-producing content for social platforms, social video platforms, that's a non-negotiable. That really should be on their bottom line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was involved, it would absolutely be without question. And even just having, it can even just be something simple in terms of knowing where who the escalation point is and how that works. And, I will absolutely double down on that in any production model that I build, and why I rolled it out so quickly at LADbible, because it felt to me something so important. And having worked at the BBC, where I worked with lots of vulnerable people making films for news, how you approach it and how you build support around them, but you can still get the content that you need out of it, was completely ingrained into me. So it is something that I feel really strongly about.
Yeah, because the construct of a lot of the digital first shows that we're seeing, have been based on being locked in a house with a load of housemates for a number of weeks, or whatever it might be. I mean, we've seen time and time again those duty of care issues come through, even on shows that have that are reasonably large budgets and have got all those processes in place. Even then, there is still problems. So it feels to me that's a sort of an area to really watch out for, isn't it? And you said that production doesn't really get as much attention really as it needs to in terms of that operational piece. And you argued that it was production and the operational part of a digital first business becomes a point of difference and a real key competitive advantage. I mean, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So the way that I see it is that the production and infrastructure in digital companies and in digital shows that are produced en masse is actually a pointer for the success of your channel. Probably also not just from a process perspective, which is obviously lovely to have smooth processes and everyone is happy, but also from a revenue process. Often when you're launching a channel from scratch, we all know it's a bit of a long game, and so you're often putting up money before you're going to see the return if your only revenue stream is money from YouTube. So in terms of thinking about that in the most efficient way possible. And also I think there's a wider piece in terms of businesses being acquirable. The processes and production and infrastructure that you've got in your business is increasingly, I am hearing the difference between being acquired and selling or not. And so I think, again, our industry is probably getting to the point where businesses we're seeing these mergers happening, we're seeing acquisitions happening, and we're seeing maybe companies thinking about selling. That production infrastructure then doesn't actually become optional. It becomes a selling point.
Yeah. Okay. So, build it properly right from the ground up, from day one. That sounds like it makes complete sense. So what when it comes to producing shows directly for social platforms and for broadcasters and streamers, I mean, obviously budgets are massively different, but what are the key differences? What are the key differences in approach that you take? So producing a show, like you say, you produce Inside for Netflix and lots of other shows for production companies for streamers. But if you're producing directly for a social first platform like YouTube, self-funding, what are the key differences there?
I mean, the budget is the key thing, and that will kind of inform a lot of decisions that are made. I think if you're a smaller channel, I actually did a talk just this week with the National Film and Television School, and there were quite a lot of creators on it who were at the tipping point, which I call the tipping point as in they know that they can't shoot, edit, produce everything themselves, but they don't know what their first infrastructure piece might be. And I always say, one, what is the thing that's causing you the most? What's causing you the most pain? Is it your editing process? Is it your shooting process? And go there first. I think when you're building smaller productions, so it's a 6-episode run, you can be really clever about the teams that you put in place, the skills of those teams, and how you're shooting it, in terms of the cameras that you use and how you position those cameras. That's probably something we're going to talk about with People Are Deep, which is a really good example of that. And also making sure that you're always batch shooting. So again, I'm sure this podcast studio, we'll do one shoot after another. It makes everything that's around us super economical. Whereas when you're thinking about a bigger show, I'm often thinking about pieces of the traditional TV model that I need. So I'd have a adjacent production and creative team and a welfare team and an edit team, and then what are the other roles within that I need that it won't look like a fully fledged infrastructure that you'd see on a reality show in TV, but it would have elements of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other kind of I find very exciting, but obviously I'm into spreadsheets, so I would find it exciting, is that every build is different because the creator will be different, the budget will be different, and the distribution strategy will be completely different. And I think the other kind of point of difference I often talk about is protecting the creator. In creator-led businesses and creator-led shows, the creator is often the creator is the closest thing to the audience, and so you kind of have to work that into your production processes to make sure that they are as much part of it as everyone else in the production team. And again, that's actually a very different dynamic to when you're building a show and you have a presenter who comes into the show and does their bit, and whereas with the creator, they are often part of the creative build, they're part of the build of the set, they're part of the build of the edit, and that's really important to work that in because they know their audience better than anyone else.
So when you came into the studio, Bryony, I know you took an immediate headed straight for the desk and had a look at what the guys have got here. But talking about you talking about Excel and you're obviously you're often deep in Excel, but with the advent of AI and the new tools that are available now, when you're setting up a new digital first business, what would you say the first what are your 3 go-to pieces of software or hardware, or what are the most productive and efficient and useful tools that you use in your role?
Yes, I AI has changed the game. And if you'd asked me this question 3 months ago, I would have given you I would have said Google Sheets.
Yeah.
And now we're 12 weeks on. And in terms of scaling a business, Claude for me is absolutely invaluable in its efficiencies, in the way that it can, its memory, and for building budgets and workflows. That's an absolute game changer. We love Frame.io. This sounds like I'm going to be doing a plug for all of these, and I don't have a relationship with Frame.io, but
neither do I. Actually, they should absolutely be sponsoring this.
Frame.io,
podcast.
can you sponsor this podcast, please? Frame.io are brilliant, and they have a lot of increasing like AI plugins. And then also I'm using Notion a lot at the moment, again, because of its AI features. And when at the moment where I am scaling a consulting business, but also at the same time I'm building production models for my clients, that is a place where I can just have everything. I can have my automations, and it's making me think about the types of workflows that I'm suggesting and building in a completely different way. And I think we should be very honest about the fact that it is changing. It's changing really quickly.
Yeah.
And there will be that will cause some shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. And that therefore is going to create, an even wider skills gap, or, which there is a massive skills gap, isn't there, now when it comes to digital first and TV. How can we fix that?
There's two things that I am seeing people do really successfully at the moment. And I kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of suggesting that TV natives double down into their niche. I think personal brand, we're in the era of the personal brand. That's what the creators are doing. I think that if we're in this digital space and the creator economy, we should also be thinking about that for ourselves. I've named my company Bryony Ink as a very strategic move into that space, because that's how the creators are building their businesses. So I think thinking about what your personal brand, how you're showing up, and what are you known for, I think that means even more in our industry than it ever did before. And I think probably that feels cringe in lots of ways, but I think if you can push past the cringe, certainly from my perspective, once I kind of push past that, what I realise is opportunity comes with visibility. And so that's a really important piece that I think TV, what I would advise people
so
to think about.
pushing yourself to be a bit more visible on LinkedIn.
Do the LinkedIn,
and,
even if you get a couple of likes, it's about consistency, and it's about showing up, and it's about if you can show up in a particular niche, that I think is going to really pay dividends. And then I think the second piece is AI only works as well as the human that is directing it. And I think the personal branding piece leads into the human element. So if you can share your personal brand as you as a human, and then you're using AI to make yourself more efficient rather than it replacing you, that's where I think you're going to see, that's where I think the wins are going to be. So rather than, which again, interestingly, it kind of comes back to mindset as well. It's rather than thinking this is going to replace me, and let's be honest, there will be some skill sets that AI will replace, but then it's thinking, okay, but how can I put a human layer on top of this that means that then my offering is different or more enhanced because of AI? And I think that's the way to think about it and to position yourself in the market.
Yeah. So finally, you put a really efficient production process around People Are Deep, which was a brand that I created for Strong Watch Studios. So what did the experience of putting all of that together teach you about creating your own brand and a self-funded piece without sacrificing quality?
People Are Deep was a really good example. And when we were kind of building it together, me, Ben and Tom, we were thinking about how do we make this as efficient as possible without it dropping in quality, because that was something that was really important to us. And what I learned personally is that you basically just need to think about every single piece of the shoot. So what we did with People Are Deep is we had the cameras framed in a very specific way. We scheduled the shoot in a very specific way. So that meant that we had one contributor come in and they would sit for 2 hours, and out of that we would have 3 YouTube videos, and then we would probably make maybe 10, 12 shorts. And then over the course of a shoot day, we would do 4 contributors. And so before you know it, you're kind of on 50, 60 deliverables plus. We built that model to make it as efficient as possible, and then bank content so that we could just be releasing. So it wasn't an always on. We had a big production stint, then the channel would kind of run itself. And I think that's a model that I have seen in so many bits of the digital industry. JD Sport do a very similar thing with their channel. They'll come up with a concept and shoot many episodes on the day. And I, in honesty, at the digital price point, you kind of have to batch shoot.
Yeah.
You know, that you can't spend, unless you have loads of money, and some people do, you can't spend a day. A shoot day cannot just be one piece of content.
It's a series in a day,
basically. It's a series in a day, exactly.
Yeah. And again, talking to Andrew from Middle Child, that's exactly what they did with the Gardening with Alan Titchmarsh channel. And that's if you're working with talent, it's about one day a month, and making that work as hard as it can for you. Well, Bryony, now it's time for your story of the week.
Oh, yes. So my story of the week is CAA and TPG. So that's a huge creator talent agency plus a massive private equity firm have created a holding company called Creative Compound, and they are investing $250 million into the creator economy. And what they're kind of saying that they're going to offer is operational infrastructure. I love the word infrastructure. I've probably said it about 1,000 times in this podcast. And the ability to put capital up front. And I think this is such a big signal in terms of where the industry is going. I have been inside and know of quite a lot of creator-led companies that are now operating like media companies. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think this signal tells us that.
Yeah.
And with creator companies that are operating like media companies, they're going to need media level operations and infrastructure, which then leans us back to the kind of the top of the podcast when we were talking about all the things that TV have established in terms of workflows, duty of care, sustainability, rigor, and we haven't even touched on what that means from like a union perspective. And the TV has had that governance for a really long time, and I think we'll have to start seeing a shift. And I think that is really interesting, and how that will play out over the next year, 3 years, 5 years.
So actually, what we're finding the professionalization, if you like, of creator-led businesses, and this new influx of money is going to obviously help fuel and pay for that. When it comes to duty of care issues and everything else, it's about that professionalization of these media businesses. Yeah, really interesting. Well, there's so much. Seems to be so many people investing into the creator economy now, but the CEA move is really, really interesting. And how about your hero of the week?
Oh, yeah. I was really glad that you asked about this. My hero of the week is Millie Bell. She's founded Everywhere Artists, and I've just been following her journey. Again, now as a female who's launched a business in this industry, it takes like enormous amount of courage to do that. And she's also doing some really cool stuff. She did Specs. She was representing Specs at the Digital Awards.
Yep.
I know that she's been doing some original content with Nella Rose, and I think again she kind of represents so much about where the industry is going, and I think what she's doing is amazing.
Yeah, and she's an absolute joy to work with as well. And around the awards, been fantastic, and Specs as well. They've been great. And who or what you tend to get in the bin, Bryony?
I am putting a sentence in the bin.
Right.
A sentence that I'm so sick of hearing.
Okay.
It's, well, we did it this way before, so...
Yeah.
And I think that, one, production has to evolve. It is evolving every single day. AI is evolving even faster than that. And I think find a sentence that kills creativity and solutions quicker than, oh, well, we did it before, so.
Yeah, right. You've got to be on your toes nowadays.
You've got to be on your toes, think differently, think laterally, and I think that's where all the best solutions and all the best creativity comes from.
Fantastic. Well, a good point to end on, Bryony. Good luck with BRYONY Ink.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on the show. Really great to talk about, infrastructure and operations and all of that.
It's the stuff that no one finds interesting to talk about, but someone's got to.
Yeah, it's one of the most important aspects of it that we think about, the creativity and the stories and everything, but actually it doesn't get made unless it's done in an efficient way. So thanks so much for coming on TellyCast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that's about it for this week's show. Thanks to Bryony for coming on. TellyCast was produced by Spirit Studios and recorded in London. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, stay safe.